They thought she was the failure of the family. They thought her husband was a broke nobody who didn't belong in their world of high society. But when Madeline's own mother tried to have security drag her out of her sister's wedding, they made the biggest mistake of their lives. They didn't realize the man standing quietly beside her didn't just buy the wedding gift. He bought the entire venue, and he was about to cancel the party. This is the story of how a family's greed destroyed them in seconds. The invitation had felt heavy in Madeline's hands when it arrived 3 months ago. It wasn't just cardstock and gold foil, it was a summons. Her younger sister Jessica was marrying into the Vanderquel family, old money, prestigious, and everything Madeline's parents, Robert and Patricia, had ever worshipped. Madeline, on the other hand, was the mistake. The daughter who chose art over business, who married for love instead of status, and who currently drove a 6-year-old Honda Civic while her sister was being ferried around in a Bentley. "Are you sure we should go?" Liam asked, his voice low and steady as he adjusted the rearview mirror. He looked handsome in his suit, though Madeline knew her mother would sniff at the fabric. It wasn't a designer label. It was off the rack. Madeline sighed, staring out the window as the lush, manicured grounds of the Château de Saint-Martin came into view. It was one of the most exclusive wedding venues in the state, a sprawling estate that cost more to rent for an evening than most people earned in a decade. "If I don't go, I'll never hear the end of it, Liam. They'll say I was jealous. They'll tell everyone I couldn't handle Jessica's happiness. I just need to show my face, smile, and leave." Liam reached over and squeezed her hand. His hands were rough, calloused from what Madeline's family assumed was manual labor. They knew he worked in tech, but because he didn't wear a Rolex or brag about stock options, they assumed he was IT support or a cable guy. They never bothered to ask. "Just remember," Liam said, a strange glint in his blue eyes, "you don't owe them anything. We can leave the second you feel uncomfortable." "I know," she whispered. As they pulled up to the valet stand, the contrast was immediate. A line of Ferraris, Porsches, and Maybachs gleamed under the afternoon sun. The valet, a young man in a crisp red vest, hesitated for a fraction of a second when he saw their Honda before rushing over with professional courtesy. But before Madeline could even step out, a shadow fell over her door. It was Patricia, her mother. Patricia didn't look like a mother greeting her daughter. She looked like a CEO, spotting a stain on a boardroom table. She was draped in silver silk that probably cost $10,000, her hair an immaculately sprayed helmet of blonde. "Madeline," Patricia said, her voice tight. She didn't look at Liam. She never looked at Liam. "You're late." "The ceremony doesn't start for 40 minutes, Mom," Madeline said, trying to keep her voice even as she stepped out. "The important guests are already mingling in the West Garden," Patricia snapped, her eyes darting to the Honda as the valet drove it away. She wrinkled her nose. "And honestly, did you have to bring that? The Vanderquels are parking right out front. It's embarrassing." "It's a car, Patricia," Liam said, stepping around the vehicle. He stood tall, 6'2", with a posture that always surprised people. He didn't slouch like a beaten man. He stood like a soldier, or perhaps a king in exile. Patricia finally acknowledged him, offering a smile that didn't reach her eyes, a smile that was more of a baring of teeth. "Liam, I see you're wearing the same suit as last Christmas. Thrifty." "It's comfortable," Liam said simply. "Well, try to stay out of the photos," Patricia instructed, turning her back on him to fuss with Madeline's dress. "Jessica is extremely stressed. She wants everything perfect. That means no drama, Madeline. No scenes. And please, tell your husband not to eat all the hors d'oeuvres. The catering is $300 a plate, not a buffet at a diner." Madeline felt the heat rise in her cheeks. Liam has never caused a scene in his life, Mum. You're the one making this awkward. I am protecting this family's reputation, Patricia hissed, gripping Madeline's arm hard enough to bruise. Robert is closing a deal with Jessica's new father-in-law tonight. A merger that will save our company. If you or your blue-collar husband embarrass us, I will never forgive you. She released Madeline and smoothed her dress, her face instantly shifting into a radiant, fake smile as a wealthy guest walked by. Ah, Senator Davis. So glad you could make it. Madeline stood there, shaking. Liam wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her close. One word, Liam whispered against her ear, his voice dropping an octave. Just say the word, Maddie, and we go. Or better yet, we stay. And I make sure they regret talking to you like that. Madeline looked at him, surprised by the cold intensity in his voice. She had seen Liam angry before, but this was different. This was calculated. No, she said, taking a deep breath. I can handle them. It's Jessica's day. Let's just get through it. But as they walked toward the grand entrance of the chateau, Madeline had a sinking feeling. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a stage play, and she had been cast as the villain. The ceremony was opulent to the point of absurdity. Doves were released. A string quartet played Debussy. Jessica looked stunning, of course, in a custom Vera Wang gown, but as she walked down the aisle, her eyes didn't seek out her groom. They scanned the crowd, checking who was watching, calculating the net worth of the audience. Madeline and Liam were seated in the 5th row, the row for distant relatives and acquaintances. The front 2 rows were reserved for the immediate family, a space where Madeline should have been. Her seat was next to a deaf great-aunt and a former babysitter. It was a deliberate slight, a spatial map of her mother's affection. When the ceremony ended, the guests migrated to the grand ballroom for the reception. This was where the real display of wealth began. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the ceiling. A fountain of champagne flowed in the center of the room. Madeline tried to stay on the periphery, holding a glass of sparkling water, but the atmosphere was suffocating. Every time she tried to approach a family member, they were suddenly busy. Her father, Robert, was deep in conversation with Mr. Vanderquell, a stout man with a cigar, laughing loudly at jokes that weren't funny. "Look at them!" a voice sneered behind her. Madeline turned to see Jessica. The bride had changed into a second dress, a sleek silk number for the reception. She held a glass of champagne and was looking at Madeline with a mix of pity and annoyance. "You look beautiful, Jess," Madeline said, offering a genuine smile. The ceremony was lovely. "Mum says Liam is drinking the good scotch," Jessica said, ignoring the compliment. "That bottle is for the VIP table only. Can you tell him to stop?" Madeline looked across the room. Liam was holding a tumbler, talking quietly to a waiter. He wasn't drinking excessively. He looked like he was asking a question. "He's having one drink, Jessica. It's a wedding." "It's my wedding," Jessica snapped. "And frankly, Maddie, people are talking. They're asking why the groom's sister-in-law is wearing a dress from last season. It looks cheap." "It's a classic cut," Madeline defended, her voice trembling slightly. "I can't afford a new gown for every event." "Maybe if you married someone with ambition, you could," Jessica said, her voice dripping with venom. "I tried to set you up with the vice president of marketing at Dad's firm, remember? But no, you had to go for the starving artist type. How's that working out for you? Does he even have a job right now?" "Liam works in software," Madeline said tightly. "He does well." Jessica laughed, a high, cruel sound. "Software, right. Fixing laptops? Listen, Maddie, I'm going to be honest because I'm your sister. You don't fit here. The photographer is about to do the family portraits at the head table. I think it would be better if you and Liam sat this one out." Madeline felt like she had been slapped. "You don't want me in the family photos?" "It's just the aesthetic," Jessica said, waving her hand vaguely. "We're going for a certain look, success, power. And you guys you bring the vibe down. You can understand, right?" Before Madeline could answer, a loud clinking of a spoon against a glass echoed through the hall. The room fell silent. Patricia was standing on the stage, microphone in hand, beaming. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention," Patricia announced. "We are about to begin the speeches. But first, I have a special announcement regarding the seating arrangements." Madeline froze. "We have had a slight overflow in the VIP section," Patricia continued, her eyes scanning the crowd until they locked directly on Madeline. "So, we are going to ask that only those who have contributed to the Vanderquell-Miller Merger Fund please remain in the main ballroom for dinner. For our other guests." She paused for dramatic effect. "Tables have been set up on the patio." A ripple of confused murmurs went through the crowd. It was a humid, sticky evening outside. "Madeline," Patricia said into the microphone, calling her out by name in front of 300 people. "Since you and Liam didn't contribute to the registry or the fund, perhaps you'd be more comfortable outside. It's a lovely view, and I'm sure the fresh air will do you good." The silence in the room was deafening. Guests turned to look at Madeline. Some looked horrified, others amused. It was a public execution of her social standing. Madeline wanted the floor to open up and swallow her. Tears pricked her eyes. She turned to find Liam. He wasn't looking at Patricia. He was looking at his phone, typing something rapidly. Then he slid the phone into his pocket and walked toward Madeline. He didn't look embarrassed. He looked dangerous. He took Madeline's hand, his grip firm. "Did you hear her?" Madeline whispered, her voice breaking. "She's kicking us out of the ballroom." "She's trying to," Liam corrected. Liam turned and faced the stage. He didn't yell. He didn't grab the microphone. He just spoke loud enough for the people nearby to hear, but his voice carried in the silent room. "Patricia," Liam said. "Are you sure you want to do that?" Patricia laughed into the microphone. "Excuse me? This is a private event, Liam. If you can't afford a seat at the table, you don't get to sit. Now please, escort my daughter outside before I call security. You're ruining the aesthetic." 2 burly security guards, hired for the event, started moving towards them. "I'm giving you one chance," Liam said, his eyes locking onto Robert, Madeline's father, who was watching from the head table with a look of indifference. "Robert, tell your wife to stand down. Treat your daughter with respect, or this wedding ends right now." Robert scoffed, standing up. "Who do you think you are, boy? You're a nobody, a freeloader. Get out of my sight before I have you thrown out on the street." "Yeah!" Jessica yelled from the stage. "Get out! You're just jealous because I married a billionaire and you married a loser." The security guards reached them. One of them reached out to grab Liam's shoulder. Liam didn't flinch. He just looked at the guard. "I wouldn't touch that suit if I were you. It costs more than your annual salary." The guard hesitated, confused by the authority in Liam's voice. "Last chance," Liam called out to the family. "Apologize to Madeline, now." "Get him out," Patricia shrieked. "Throw the trash out." Liam sighed. He looked at Madeline, his expression softening. "I'm sorry, Maddie. I promised no scenes. But I can't let them treat you like this." He reached into his inner pocket and pulled out a black card, not a credit card, but a thick, matte black access card with a golden chip. He held it up in the air. At that exact moment, the double doors at the back of the ballroom burst open. The double doors didn't just open, they were thrown wide with a sense of urgency that shattered the room's murmur. The sound echoed off the high, vaulted ceilings, silencing the string quartet that had been playing a soft interlude. Patricia, standing on the stage with the microphone still clutched in her manicured hand, looked triumphant. She assumed the security team had arrived in force to drag her daughter and that peasant husband out of her sight. She adjusted her diamond necklace, a smug smile playing on her lips as she prepared to make a witty remark about keeping the riffraff out. But it wasn't security guards who marched through the doors. It was a phalanx of 6 men in immaculate charcoal suits, moving with a synchronized precision that suggested military training or high-level corporate protection. In the center of the formation walked a man whom everyone in the room recognized. At least, the people who mattered recognized him. It was Henri d'Aubigny, the owner of the Château de Saint-Martin. Henri was a legend in the hospitality world. He was a man who didn't just manage events, he curated history. He was known for being aloof, unapproachable, and terrifyingly strict about his venue. Presidents had been denied bookings here because Henri didn't like their politics. Celebrities had been banned for spilling wine on the carpets. Patricia's smile faltered slightly, but she quickly recovered. Ah, she thought. He's coming to apologize personally for the disturbance. She tapped the microphone. Thank you, Monsieur d'Aubigny, she cooed, her voice booming over the speakers. I apologize that you had to come down here yourself. We have 2 uninvited guests causing a scene near the south exit. If your men could remove them immediately, we can get back to our dinner. Henri d'Aubigny didn't even look at the stage. He didn't look at the bride, Jessica, who was posing near the cake. He didn't look at Robert, who was trying to signal the waiter for more scotch. Henri walked straight toward Liam. The room watched in confused silence. Why was the owner of the chateau walking toward the man in the cheap suit? As Henri approached, the security guard who had been about to grab Liam's shoulder froze. Henri snapped his fingers, a sharp, cracking sound. Step away, Henri ordered the guard, his voice low but cutting. Do not touch him. The guard blinked, confused. Sir, Mrs. Miller said, I don't care what Mrs. Miller said, Henry snapped. If you touch him, you will never work in this industry again. Step back. The guard scrambled backward. Henri stopped in front of Liam. To the shock of 300 guests, the proud, arrogant Frenchman bowed. It wasn't a slight nod. It was a deep, respectful bow from the waist. Mr. Kavanagh, Henri said, his voice trembling slightly. My deepest apologies. The staff did not alert me that you were on the premises. I was in the administrative wing reviewing the accounts. Had I known you were attending, I would have cleared the royal suite for you immediately. Liam pocketed the black card. His face was unreadable, a mask of cold indifference. It's fine, Henri. I didn't want to fuss. I came here to support my wife's family. Your wife? Henri asked, his eyes darting to Madeleine. Madeleine stood there, her heart hammering against her ribs. She looked from Henry to Liam, her mind racing. Mr. Kavanagh? Liam's last name was Kavanagh, of course, but she had never heard anyone say it with such reverence. To her, he was just Liam, the guy who liked spicy Thai food and fell asleep watching old movies. Madeleine is my wife, Liam said, his hand tightening protectively around hers. And apparently, she is not welcome in the ballroom. Henri's face drained of colour. He looked up at the stage where Patricia was standing, her mouth slightly open. He looked at the tables set up on the patio outside, the overflow seating for the unwanted guests. This is unacceptable, Henry whispered. A catastrophic failure of hospitality. What is going on here? Patricia's voice screeched over the speakers. She couldn't handle the attention shifting away from her. She marched down the stairs of the stage, her heels clicking aggressively on the marble floor. Monsieur d'Aubigny, I am paying a fortune for this venue. Why are you bowing to my son-in-law? He's a nobody. He's an IT technician." Henri straightened up. He turned to face Patricia, and the look of deference vanished, replaced by a sneer of absolute contempt. "A nobody?" Henri repeated. "Madame, do you know who owns the Château de Saint-Martin?" "You do," Patricia scoffed, "and I am your client." "I am the general manager and the public face," Henri corrected her coldly. "I own a 10% stake, the other 90%. The land, the building, the brand, and the holding company that manages it belongs to the Titanium Group." Patricia blinked. "So? What does that have to do with him?" Henry gestured to Liam with an open hand. "This is Liam Kavanagh, the founder and chairman of the Titanium Group. He is my employer. He is the owner of this building. And technically, madame, he is the one paying for your champagne." The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavy, physical silence, as if the air had been sucked out of the room. Madeleine stared at her husband. "Liam?" she whispered. "The Titanium Group, the investment firm." Liam looked down at her, his eyes soft and apologetic. "I told you I worked in tech, Maddie. I just didn't specify that I own the tech companies and the banks that fund them." "You lied," she breathed. "I didn't lie," he said quietly. "I omitted. When we met, you liked me for me. You didn't care about money. You were the first person who didn't look at me and see a dollar sign. I wanted to keep that. I wanted to be just Liam with you." "That's impossible." Robert, Madeleine's father, roared from the head table. He stood up, knocking over his chair. His face was red, a mix of alcohol and panic. "Titanium Group is a global conglomerate. Their CEO is a recluse. No one has seen him in public for 5 years. I value my privacy," Liam said, turning his cold gaze to his father-in-law. "I don't do interviews, I don't do galas, and I certainly don't brag about my wealth to people who measure worth by the size of a wristwatch." Robert stumbled forward. "But the deal, the merger, my company, Miller Logistics. We're closing a deal with Vanderquell Industries tonight to save us from bankruptcy." Liam tilted his head. "Ah, yes. The merger." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. It was a simple, sleek device. He tapped the screen twice. "Actually, Robert," Liam said, his voice carrying clearly through the room without a microphone, "you're not merging with Vanderquell Industries. Vanderquell Industries is merely a broker. They were acquiring your company on behalf of a parent investor." Robert looked at Mr. Vanderquell, the groom's father. Mr. Vanderquell was sitting very still, sweat beading on his forehead. He had recognized Liam the moment Henri bowed. He knew exactly who was standing there. "Richard," Liam said to Mr. Vanderquell, "tell him who the parent investor is." Mr. Vanderquell stood up slowly, his legs shaking. He looked like a man facing a firing squad. "It's Titanium Group, Robert. We were brokering the deal for Mr. Kavanagh's firm." Robert's knees gave out. He grabbed the table for support. "You?" he gasped, looking at Liam. "You are the buyer. You are the one saving my company." "I was," Liam corrected. "I was reviewing the portfolio. I saw a struggling logistics company run by my father-in-law. I thought, why not? I thought I could help the family out anonymously. Keep you afloat, so Madeleine wouldn't worry about her parents going broke." Liam took a step closer to the head table. The guests parted like the Red Sea, terrified to be in his path. "I was going to sign the final authorization tonight," Liam said. "I was going to save your legacy, Robert. I was going to let you retire in comfort. All you had to do was treat your daughter with basic human decency." Liam looked around the opulent room, at the flowers, the ice sculptures, the sheer waste of money. "But instead," Liam continued, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "I come here and see you treating my wife, the kindest, most talented woman I know, like a servant. You mock her poverty, which exists only because she is too proud to ask me for money, and I respect her independence. You try to throw her out of a wedding she didn't even want to attend." Liam looked at Henri. "Henri?" "Yes, sir." "Cancel the event." "You can't do that," Jessica screamed. The bride ran across the dance floor, her massive dress rustling violently. Her face was contorted in a mask of pure entitlement. "This is my wedding. We have a contract. Daddy paid the deposit." "Your father paid the deposit with a credit card that is currently maxed out, banking on the merger funds clearing on Monday morning," Liam said calmly. "And as for the contract, Henri, what does Clause 14, Section B of the rental agreement say?" Henri didn't need to check a file. He knew the rulebook by heart. Clause 14 states that the management reserves the right to terminate any event immediately, without refund, if guests or hosts engage in harassment, discrimination, or abusive behavior toward staff or other guests. "There you go," Liam said. "You harassed my wife. You publicly humiliated a guest. The event is over." "No!" Patricia shrieked. She looked deranged now, her perfect hair coming undone as she rushed toward them. "You are lying! You are just trying to ruin Jessica's moment because you're jealous. Security! Grab him!" The security guards didn't move. They were looking at Henri, who was staring at them with a look that said, "Move a muscle and you're fired." "Patricia!" Mr. Vanderquell shouted, finally finding his voice. "Shut up, you stupid woman, shut up!" Patricia froze, shocked by the groom's father yelling at her. "Richard, why are you siding with him?" "Because he holds the debt," Richard Vanderquell roared, wiping sweat from his face with a silk napkin. "He owns the bank that holds the mortgage on my factories, Patricia. If he wants to, he can call in my loans tomorrow and I'll be selling pencils on the street corner." Richard turned to Liam, clasping his hands together in a pleading gesture. "Mr. Kavanagh, please. We had no idea. If I had known who you were, if I had known Madeline was your wife, she would have been at the head table. I would have sat on the floor myself to give her a seat." "But you didn't know," Madeline spoke up. Everyone turned to look at her. She had been silent for most of the confrontation, processing the shock. But now, seeing the fear in the eyes of the people who had looked down on her for years, something in her shifted. She didn't feel small anymore. She felt tired. Tired of their games. "You only respect people if you think they have power," Madeline said, her voice shaking but clear. "You didn't need to know Liam was a billionaire to treat him with respect. You just needed to be decent human beings, and you couldn't even do that." "Maddie, baby," Patricia said, her tone instantly shifting to a sickly sweet, desperate wheedle. She walked over, reaching out a hand. "We were just stressed. Weddings are so stressful. You know how I get. I didn't mean it. We love you. Your family." Madeline took a step back, avoiding her mother's touch. "No, Mum, you don't love me. You love the idea of success. And right now, you're just terrified because you realized you bet on the wrong horse." "Madeline, please," Robert pleaded, walking around the table. He looked old suddenly. "The company. The employees. If the merger doesn't happen, we lose everything. The house, the cars, the pension. You can't let him destroy us." Madeline looked at Liam. He was waiting for her cue. He held the power of financial life and death over them, but he was letting her decide. "Liam," Madeline said softly. "Yes?" "I want to go home. I have a commission to finish and I'm hungry, and I don't want to eat here." "Understood," Liam said. He turned back to Robert and Mr. Vanderquell. The merger is dead. I'm instructing my team to withdraw the offer, effective immediately. Robert, I suggest you file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in the morning. It might save your house, but I doubt it. And the wedding? Jessica sobbed, mascara running down her face. What about my reception? The food is already served. Liam looked at the tables laden with lobster and filet mignon. He looked at Henri. Henri, pack up all the food, Liam ordered. Every single plate. Box it up. Call the local shelters in the city. Tell them we have a donation of 5-star catering coming their way. At least someone appreciative will get to enjoy it. At once, sir, Henry said. He turned to the waiters, who were watching with wide eyes. You heard Mr. Kavanagh. Clear the tables. Pack everything. The chaos that ensued was a sight to behold. Waiters immediately began snatching plates away from stunned guests. The string quartet packed up their instruments and fled. You can't do this, Jessica screamed, grabbing a bottle of wine. This is mine. A waiter gently but firmly took the bottle from her hand. Sorry, madame, the owner's orders. The guests, realizing the party was truly over and not wanting to be associated with the now ruined Miller family, began to scramble for the exits. It was a stampede of silk and tuxedos. No one said goodbye to the bride. No one hugged the mother. They just wanted to get away from the blast zone before they became collateral damage. Liam took off his suit jacket and wrapped it around Madeline's shoulders. Ready? Yeah, she said. They turned to leave, but Patricia blocked their path. She fell to her knees, grasping at the hem of Madeline's dress. It was a pathetic, theatrical display, exactly the kind of drama she had warned Madeline against. Madeline, you ungrateful brat, Patricia wailed, her facade cracking into pure rage. I gave you life. How dare you walk away? Fix this. Tell him to fix this. Madeline looked down at her mother. You kicked me out, Mum, remember? You told me to go outside because I didn't fit the aesthetic. She gently pulled her dress free from her mother's grip. I'm just following your instructions. I'm leaving. Liam guided her past the wailing woman on the floor. As they reached the grand entrance, Henri d'Aubigny was holding the door open for them. Mr. Kavanagh, Henri said quietly, shall I bring the Rolls-Royce around? It is in the private garage. No thanks, Henri, Liam said, winking at Madeline. We brought the Honda. It gets better gas mileage. They walked out into the cool night air, leaving the chaos of the Château de Saint-Martin behind them. But as they reached their car, the reality of what had just happened began to settle in. Madeline stopped, leaning against the passenger door of the Civic. Liam, she said, her voice serious. We need to talk. Not about them. About us. Liam stopped. The confidence of the billionaire CEO vanished, replaced by the vulnerability of a husband who knew he had some explaining to do. I know. I have a lot to tell you. You own the venue, she said. You own the bank. What else do you own? Liam hesitated. Technically, I own the apartment complex we live in. I bought it last year because the landlord was going to raise the rent on Mrs. Higgins in 4B, and I didn't want her to move. Madeline stared at him for a long moment, and then, unexpectedly, she started to laugh. It was a hysterical, relieved laugh. You bought a building to save a cat lady? She makes good cookies, Liam shrugged. You're insane, she said, wiping a tear from her eye. And you're in so much trouble. I know, he said. Can I take you to a diner? I promise I can afford the milkshakes. Madeline smiled, a real, genuine smile. Let's go. But as they got into the car, Liam's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression hardened again. What is it? Madeline asked, sensing the shift. It's my head of security, Liam said, showing her the screen. "Your father isn't giving up. He's calling his lawyers. And he's calling the press. He's going to spin this. He's going to try to paint you as the villain who manipulated a billionaire into destroying her own family." Madeleine's smile faded. "He would do that?" "He's desperate," Liam said, starting the engine. "And desperate men are dangerous. This isn't over, Maddie. The wedding is over, but the war is just starting." The morning sun hit the floor-to-ceiling windows of Liam's penthouse apartment, a place Madeleine had slept in hundreds of times, believing it was a rental he shared with a roommate to save costs. Now, knowing he owned the entire building, the sunlight felt different. It felt sharper. Madeleine sat at the kitchen island, staring at her phone. Her hands were trembling so violently she had to set the device down on the marble counter. "Don't look at it," Liam said. He walked into the kitchen, dressed in a simple t-shirt and sweatpants, looking every bit the man she loved, yet carrying a new weight of authority. He placed a cup of coffee in front of her. "The PR team is handling it." "They're not just talking about the wedding, Liam," Madeleine whispered, her voice hoarse. "They're rewriting my entire life." She tapped the screen. The headline on the Daily Chronicle's online edition screamed in bold black letters, "Billionaire's Bridezilla. How a jealous sister destroyed the society wedding of the year." Underneath was a photo of Madeleine from 5 years ago, looking disheveled after a long flight, contrasted with a professional studio portrait of Jessica looking angelic. "Read the quote," Madeleine said, tears welling in her eyes. "Just read what my mother said." Liam picked up the phone. His jaw tightened as he scanned the article. "We tried to be inclusive," Patricia Miller told reporters outside her home this morning. "We knew Madeleine was struggling financially, so we tried to give her a seat where she wouldn't feel pressured to compete with the wealthier guests. We wanted to protect her dignity. But she has always been jealous of Jessica. When she found out her husband had money she hid from us, by the way, she used it as a weapon. She ordered him to shut down the wedding just to spite us. It broke my heart. I'm a mother. I love all my children. But Madeleine has always been troubled." Liam set the phone down, the screen cracking slightly under the pressure of his grip. "She's spinning it," Liam said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "She's turning their cruelty into charity. She's claiming they put us outside to protect our dignity." "And people believe her," Madeline said, scrolling down to the comment section. "Look, ungrateful daughter, gold digger. She trapped a billionaire and now thinks she's royalty. They hate me, Liam. Yesterday I was invisible. Today I'm the most hated woman in the city." The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Kavanagh," the doorman's voice came through. "Your legal counsel, Ms. Victoria Vance, is here. And, sir, there are about 50 paparazzi camped out across the street. They're blocking the garage exit." "Send Victoria up," Liam said, "and tell security to keep the perimeter locked down. No one gets in." Minutes later, the elevator doors opened and Victoria Vance stepped out. She was a striking woman in her 40s, known as the Iron Lady of corporate litigation. She carried a briefcase that likely contained enough legal ammunition to level a small country. "It's a mess," Victoria said without preamble, tossing a stack of newspapers onto the table. "Your father-in-law, Robert Miller, has been busy. He's been on 3 morning radio shows since 6 a.m. He's painting a very specific narrative. The Miller family is a hard-working, blue-collar success story that is being crushed by a predatory billionaire who stole their daughter." "He's playing the underdog," Liam noted. "Smart? It's better than smart. It's effective," Victoria said, pouring herself a glass of water. "The public loves to hate the rich. Even though the Millers are wealthy, compared to you, Liam, they look like mum and pop shop owners. Robert is claiming that you reneged on the merger deal out of spite, which will cost 500 jobs at Miller Logistics. He's leveraging the employees. He's making you the villain who is firing working-class people because your wife got her feelings hurt at a party. Madeline buried her face in her hands. I didn't want any of this. I just wanted to paint and live a quiet life. Now 500 people are going to lose their jobs because of me? Liam walked over and spun her chair around so she had to face him. He knelt down, taking her hands. No one is losing their job because of you, he said firmly. Robert ran that company into the ground years ago. The audit report I saw last week showed that he's been borrowing against the pension fund to pay for Patricia's lifestyle. The company was dead before we walked into that wedding. He's just using you as the scapegoat for his failure. So what do we do? Madeline asked. If we defend ourselves, we look defensive. If we stay silent, we look guilty. Victoria smiled, a sharp, predatory expression. We don't defend, and we don't stay silent. We escalate. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a tablet. I've been digging into the Millers' communications. Since the wedding ended last night, Jessica has sent over 40 text messages to her friends, bragging about the media coverage. She thinks this is her ticket to reality TV fame. But more importantly, I found the raw footage from the wedding videographer. The videographer? Madeline asked. But they work for Jessica. They worked for Jessica, Liam corrected. Until Jessica refused to pay them last night, because the wedding was ruined. They were quite happy to sell the raw SD cards to Victoria for a premium. Victoria tapped the screen. We have audio, crystal clear audio of Patricia telling you to sit outside because you didn't fit the aesthetic. We have video of Jessica mocking your dress. And best of all, we have a hot mic moment from the head table where Robert tells Mr. Vanderquell that he needs the merger money to cover up his accounting errors before the IRS audits him next month. Madeline's eyes widened. He admitted to fraud on tape? He thought the microphones were off during the dinner service, Victoria said. Amateurs always forget the mics are always hot. Liam stood up, his demeanor shifting from husband to CEO. Victoria, set up a press conference, not a statement, a live broadcast. Prime time tonight. And the angle? Victoria asked. Total transparency, Liam said. We're not just going to clear Madeline's name. We're going to expose the rot. Robert wanted a media war. Fine, I own the network. Let's see how he likes the news when he can't control the spin. Madeline looked at the tablet, seeing the paused frame of her mother's sneering face. Wait, she said. Liam paused. What is it, Maddie? If you want to stop, we stop. I can buy them off. I can make them disappear quietly. Madeline stood up. She walked to the window and looked down at the paparazzi swarming below like ants. She thought about every birthday she had spent alone because her parents were at a gala. She thought about the way Jessica had sneered at her art. She thought about the overflow table next to the garbage cans. No, Madeline said, turning back to them. Her voice was steady. Don't buy them off. Run the footage. The grand ballroom of the Regency Hotel, another property in Liam's portfolio, was packed. Every major news outlet, gossip blogger, and financial reporter in the country was there. The air was thick with anticipation. The billionaire recluse, Liam Kavanagh, was finally stepping into the light. And he was bringing his wife. Backstage, Madeline smoothed the fabric of her dress. It was a simple navy sheath, elegant and understated. No diamonds, no flash, just her. You ready? Liam asked, adjusting his tie. He looked regal, not in an arrogant way, but with the quiet confidence of a man who held all the cards. I'm terrified, she admitted. Good, he said. Use it. People connect with fear. They hate perfection. Be real. They walked out onto the stage. The flashbulbs were blinding, a strobe light effect that lasted for nearly a minute. When the room finally settled, Liam stepped to the podium. Madeline stood beside him, her head held high. Good evening, Liam began. I am Liam Kavanagh. For years I have valued my privacy above all else. But yesterday my wife's family decided to make our private lives a matter of public debate. They have accused my wife, Madeline, of jealousy, pettiness, and sabotage. They have accused me of destroying a family business out of spite. He paused, looking directly into the camera lens. I am not here to argue with opinions. I am here to present facts. Behind them, a massive screen flickered to life. The video played. It wasn't edited with music or commentary. It was raw. The audience watched in stunned silence as the footage from the wedding entrance played. They heard Patricia's shrill voice. Did you have to bring that car? It's embarrassing. They heard the crunch of the gravel as the valet took the Honda away. Then, the scene shifted to the ballroom. The audio was pristine. You don't fit here, Jessica's voice echoed through the speakers. You bring the vibe down. Then, the coup de grace. Patricia on the microphone, announcing the seating change. Since you and Liam didn't contribute to the registry or the fund, perhaps you'd be more comfortable outside. Gasps rippled through the press corps. It was one thing to read about family drama. It was another to see a mother publicly humiliate her daughter with such casual cruelty. That, Liam said, gesturing to the frozen image of Patricia's smirk, is the dignity they were trying to protect. He clicked a remote. The screen changed to a document. It was a balance sheet. This is the internal ledger of Miller Logistics, Liam continued. As you can see, the company has been insolvent for 18 months. The pension fund, money that belongs to the drivers and warehouse workers, is empty. It was drained via a series of shell company transfers to an offshore account in the Caymans. Reporters were furiously typing on their laptops. This wasn't just gossip anymore. This was federal crime territory. My father-in-law, Robert Miller, claimed I cancelled the merger to hurt him, Liam said. The truth is, I cancelled the merger because Titanium Group does not acquire crime scenes. I will not use my investors' money to bail out a man who stole from his own employees to buy Bentleys and throw lavish weddings. Liam turned to Madeline. I have one more thing to address. The accusation that Madeline is a gold digger. He stepped back, giving Madeline the podium. Madeline took a deep breath. She didn't look at the teleprompter. She looked at the crowd. I didn't know Liam had money until yesterday, she said, her voice soft but amplified clearly by the microphone. I married him when he was driving a beat-up sedan and living in a rental. I married him because he was the only person who ever asked me about my paintings instead of my sister's engagement ring. My family says I'm jealous. I'm not jealous. I'm just disappointed. She looked at the camera, addressing her parents directly. You wanted a billionaire in the family, Madeleine said. You got one. But you were so busy looking down on the man in the cheap suit that you missed him. You missed the chance to be saved, not by his money, but by his kindness. And now, it's too late. The press conference ended. There were no questions taken. There was no need. The evidence was irrefutable. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. Within an hour of the broadcast, Team Madeline was trending #1 globally. The internet, which had been ready to crucify her that morning, swung violently in the other direction. The raw footage of Patricia's cruelty went viral, meme-ified and dissected by millions. By the next morning, The Miller Logistics headquarters was raided by the FBI. The evidence Liam had presented regarding the pension fund theft was enough to trigger an immediate warrant. Robert Miller was led out of his office in handcuffs, his coat over his head to hide from the cameras, a stark contrast to the proud man who had stood at the head table just 48 hours prior. Patricia fared no better. The socialite circles of the city were ruthless. She was immediately removed from the board of the charity gala she chaired. Her friends stopped returning her calls. When she tried to go to her usual country club for lunch, the maître d' politely informed her that her membership had been suspended pending review of the club's code of conduct. She was effectively exiled from the only world she cared about. But the sweetest justice came for Jessica. 2 days after the press conference, Madeline received a call. It was Jessica. "Maddie?" Jessica's voice was small, broken. "Please, you have to help me." "Help you?" Madeline asked, putting the phone on speaker so Liam could hear. They were sitting on their balcony, watching the sunset. "Richard, the Vanderquels. They're seeking an annulment," Jessica sobbed. "They say the marriage wasn't consummated because we spent the wedding night arguing, so they can void it. They're kicking me out of the condo. They want the ring back. Maddie, I have nowhere to go. Mum and Dad's house is being seized by the feds." Madeline listened to her sister cry, the same sister who had mocked her Honda, who had told her she brought the vibe down. "I'm sorry, Jessica," Madeline said. "That sounds incredibly stressful." "Can I come stay with you?" Jessica begged. "Please, I know you have a huge apartment, just for a few weeks until I get back on my feet. I'm your sister." Madeline looked at Liam. He didn't shake his head. He didn't nod. He left it entirely up to her. "You are my sister," Madeline said, "but you're not my family. Family doesn't treat people the way you treated me." "But I have nothing," Jessica shrieked. "I'm going to be homeless." "You have your health," Madeline said, echoing a phrase Patricia used to say whenever Madeline complained about not having money for art supplies. "And you have ambition. I'm sure you'll figure it out. Goodbye, Jessica." She hung up the phone. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was light. It was the feeling of a heavy backpack finally being set down after a 20-year hike. "You okay?" Liam asked. "I think so," Madeline said. "I think I finally am." "Good," Liam said, "because there's one more thing." He stood up and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "I know we're already married," Liam said, looking shy for the first time in days. "But I realized I never gave you a real ring. I couldn't afford one back then. And I know you don't care about diamonds, but—" He opened the box. Inside wasn't a diamond. It was a rare, deep blue sapphire, surrounded by smaller stones in a vintage setting. It looked like the ocean. It looked like art. "It belonged to my grandmother," Liam said. "She was an artist, too. She painted watercolors. I thought maybe it would fit your aesthetic." Madeline laughed, a sound that was half sob. She held out her hand, and he slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "So," Liam said, pulling her into his arms, "now that we've destroyed an empire, exposed a fraud, and ruined a high society wedding, what do you want to do for dinner?" Madeline looked at the multi-million-dollar view of the city skyline, then back at her husband. "I'm craving pizza," she said, "but not the fancy kind, the greasy kind from the place on 4th Street. Liam grinned. "I'll get the keys to the Honda." 5 years later, the Kavanagh Foundation for the Arts was the center of the Manhattan social scene. Inside, the air smelled of expensive perfume and triumph. Madeline stood in the center of the gallery, wearing a deep emerald velvet gown, her hand resting on the arm of her husband, Liam. She was no longer the shy, rejected girl in the Honda. She was a celebrated artist, and tonight was the opening of her solo exhibition. Behind her hung the centerpiece of the show, a massive, moody painting titled The Empty Table, depicting a lavish wedding feast where the chairs were rotting and empty. "Mrs. Kavanagh," a reporter asked, "this piece is the talk of the city. What inspired it?" "It's a reminder," Madeline said, her voice cool and confident, "that sometimes being excluded from the table is the only thing that saves you from the poison." As the crowd applauded, Liam leaned in close. "Did you see her?" Madeline's eyes drifted to the back of the room, near the kitchen doors. There, holding a tray of empty champagne flutes, stood a woman in a server's uniform. Her hair was grey, her face lined with the harsh reality of poverty. It was Patricia. After the FBI raids, the Miller fortune had evaporated. Robert was serving time in a minimum security prison, and Patricia, shunned by high society, had been forced to work for a catering agency. Fate had assigned her to serve the very daughter she had once discarded. "Do you want me to have her removed?" Liam whispered. "I can tell security she doesn't fit the aesthetic." Madeline watched her mother tremble as she tried to avoid eye contact with the guests. "No," Madeline said. "Let her stay. Let her serve. Let her see exactly what she threw away." The evening was winding down when a piercing scream shattered the elegant atmosphere near the entrance. "I am her sister. You can't keep me out." Madeline and Liam walked to the foyer to see two security guards restraining a disheveled woman. It was Jessica. The once pristine bride looked desperate, wearing a stained knockoff dress. Her billionaire marriage had been annulled days after the wedding scandal, and she had spent the last 5 years spiraling into debt. "Maddie," Jessica wailed, dropping to her knees when she saw them. "Please, I'm broke. I'm living in a studio in Jersey. I can't pay rent. Liam, you have billions. Just give me a loan. Just 100,000. That's nothing to you." Liam stepped forward, towering over her. "You're right. 100,000 is nothing to me. I just donated 5 million to this gallery tonight." Jessica's eyes lit up with pathetic hope. "See? You're generous. You're family." "But," Liam said, his voice cold enough to freeze the room, "I don't invest in bad assets, and you, Jessica, are a liability." He signaled the guards. "She's trespassing. Get her out." "Mum! Mum, help me!" Jessica screamed as she was dragged backward out the doors. In the back of the room, Patricia peeked out from the kitchen. She saw her favorite daughter screaming for help, but instead of stepping forward, Patricia ducked her head in shame and let the kitchen door swing shut. She didn't save Jessica. She went back to scrubbing dishes. Madeline watched the doors close, silence returning to the gallery. She instinctively placed a hand on her stomach, feeling the slight flutter of the baby growing inside her, a secret she and Liam were keeping for just a little longer. "Are you okay?" Liam asked. Madeline looked at the closed doors, then up at her husband. "I feel free." Liam smiled and led her out to their waiting car. As they drove away, leaving the ruins of the Miller family behind them, Madeline didn't look back. She was finally exactly where she belonged. And that is the story of how Madeline and Liam turned the ultimate humiliation into the ultimate victory. The Miller family learned the hard way that when you treat people like dirt because you think they have no value, you might just be kicking out the only people who could have saved you. Patricia and Robert chased wealth so blindly that they lost the only real treasure they had, their daughter. It's a brutal reminder that money can buy a wedding, but it can't buy class, and it certainly can't buy loyalty. Madeline didn't just walk away. She rose above them, leaving them to drown in the shallow pool of their own greed. If you were Madeline, would you have let your mother stay and work as a server, or would you have kicked her out? And did Jessica deserve to be arrested, or was that too harsh? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story. We have a crazy drama coming up next week about a cheating husband who didn't realize his wife owned the company he worked for. You don't want to miss it. Thanks for watching. And remember, be careful who you look down on. You never know who's holding the keys to the castle. See you next time.